But I say that because that last bird story this morning that I told ended in the bird's untimely death. And this one, well, just take it for what it is, it's a story. Another man with a pet shop got in a new bird when someone traded it in. That should have tipped him off a little bit there, but he got that bird in, and the first morning when he went back into the back room before putting it out to feed them, as he was working around that cage, he uncovered it. That bird was looking at him, and that bird said, "You're fat." He said, "You shouldn't talk to me like that, bird. You better behave yourself." And he was going on about his business. Thought, well, no wonder they traded him in, they're acting like this. Next morning he went in, bird uncovered, put the food in. The bird said, "You're ugly." And he said, "Bird, if you say anything like that to me again, I'll hurt you." Next day, went in. The bird looked at him for a long time, and he stood there looking at the bird, just sort of daring him. The bird said, "You've got bad breath." He grabbed the bird out of the cage, slammed it down on the ground, kicked it, picked it up, slapped it a couple of times, threw it back in its cage into a heap. Didn't care if it lived or not. He said, "I'm not going to be able to sell this bird anyway." So the next morning he got in, he uncovered the cage and stood there looking at the bird and waited and waited. And he said, "Well," and the bird looked him right in the eye and said, "You know." What I want to talk to you about today for a few minutes is nothing that is earth-shattering and new. You know, I'm just here to remind you. We had a little self-examination in the first hour this morning, looking at our hearing. This hour I want us to look at forgiveness. You've already had Colossians chapter 3 read to you. This passage is instructing Christians on how they're to behave themselves one toward another. How do I conduct myself? How do I get along with my brothers and sisters and with my fellow man? The key is in the way that we dress ourselves. Verse 12 says, "Put on therefore," and gives these characteristics. And one of the main characteristics in verse 13, he says, "Forbearing one another and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye." Two terms here we want to look at, then we'll jump into our lesson. Forbearing. The Greek term is anakamai. It means up, the ana part, and ekamai or ekio, I hold. To hold someone up is the idea of forbearance. To support someone, to lift someone when they're down, maybe. That's the idea of, that's part of the idea of forgiveness. Forgiving, the next word that's given there is charizomai. It is from the root word charis in the Greek language, which means grace. To grant as a favor is the idea. And so this concept of forgiveness that's rolled up here in this verse and described by the fact that Christ forgave you and you ought to be doing that one to another has to do with supporting each other and extending favor one to another. We know what forgiveness is. We know what it's about. But do we do it like we should? There are 2 points in this passage that I want us to notice this morning, and the lesson will be yours. The first has 2 subpoints, and the last has several more than that. But we'll cover these in a timely way and remind ourselves of what forgiveness is to be and what it's about. And to look and flesh out forgiveness for most of our study, we're going to be in Luke chapter 15. In Luke 15, beginning at verse 11, we'll get into our study by looking at someone who wants to receive forgiveness. That's really the 2 parts of that verse. There are those who need forgiveness, and there are those who need to forgive others who have asked for forgiveness or who have sinned against them. And those are the 2 points we really want to look at here as we have time this morning. First of all, to receive forgiveness or to be forgiven, there are a couple of things that I've got to do, and I don't think there's a better place in God's Word to study forgiveness than in Luke 15. Jesus, in telling this parable, starting at verse 11, said, "A certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me.' and he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, How many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. We'll pause right there and look at the first thing that we need to notice in regards to being forgiven. Number one, to be forgiven, I've got to address the mess. I've got to address the mess that I've made. Look at this young man. He made all kinds of messes out of things, but the first and the foremost thing is his relationship with his father. He had ruined that. He went to his father basically and said, Father, I wish you were dead. No, we don't read those words, but that's the implication.